ultimately with that confidence will remove some of the apprehension of not wanting to have those conversations about what's out there, how to leverage it for your business, how to leverage it in your personal life. Typically, there is some reservation about any new technology coming up, especially one as vast as this. It takes a while for it to adopt. So, I really want to try to give you some of that confidence so that you can speak to it. You understand a little bit of the background of it, what it is, what it can do, which way it's going. And then you start to ask the right questions. Once you have a fundamental understanding of that, then you can start to say, okay, well, now I have my head wrapped around it, at least at a basic level. I can now think about how does this help me? You'll start to ask those questions in applications out there in everyday life. Like, okay, so you have AI, but tell me about it now. What can you do? Because until you have that understanding, you won't even know to ask those questions. You're just sort of, okay, sure. So it has that feature set on there. Okay, for whatever that's worth, right? So again, I want you to be able to walk away today with a little bit of confidence in that. So again, if you ask a question, and even if it's a silly one, I promise that while we might laugh, nobody will point at you while we laugh. How about that? That's the deal that I'll make with you. So the first, there's a lot of content. I mean, we could, ironically, when I actually I used AI to test it out a little bit and ask a few questions. So when I first went through the curriculum on this, and I started thinking, let's pare it down a little bit. What's the time frame that this looks like? It said we would recommend you do a two-day workshop. The first day of 8 hours, do it this way. The second day of 8 hours, do it this way. So I thought we might have to pare that down just a little bit in our session here. So as it is, it's still a lot of content. I'm going to do my best not to just blast you with the information. So again, and I have a tendency to speak fast as it is. I'll try to slow it down, but just raise your hand, ask questions as we go. If there's something you don't understand, just let me know. With that, we'll the way this is going to work. So the way I thought it'd make the most sense is the first hour, and we'll take a little breather, is going to be more theory. It's going to be me trying to talk to you about some of the fun. Go over some of the terminology that's out there. What's the kind of the meat and potatoes of AI? And once we get through that, and how it relates to construction, of course, in the building industry, but truthfully, the fundamentals of AI across every industry are similar. How you use it is and leverage it in each industry is unique. Okay, and there are definitely unique aspects of it to the building and construction trades, but understanding those fundamental tools of how it works, that's pretty much, we get into these models when you start talking about AI, they're the same models that are being used for medical, for every other industry, like manufacturing, construction. Then they take the bigger players like the Procores of the world, taking that and they're tweaking that to go directly towards that use, and they start to dial that in. But again, understanding that fundamental, that's where we're going to spend a lot of that first hour. The second hour, I'm going to get into some of the takeaways I said were, we want to create a virtual assistant for you guys. In doing so, I'll need 5 minutes to make sure we're using the AVA computer here. So I had it set up on my computer. So we'll see if we can do this transition. But I want to go into ChatGPT. I want to go in to show you that. And so this is how you can create a virtual assistant. And they call that a custom GPT. And that's going to be where it's a little more hands-on. The takeaway is I'm actually going to give you a link today that you can go home and click to it. It'll take you to my link that I already created for the building industry. You can go into ChatGPT, assuming you have that, click on that particular, and I'll show you how, and then start to asking questions. And you'll find it very interesting using that link, okay, which is a custom GPT versus just asking a normal chat in a ChatGPT survey industry. You'll get a completely different answer, okay? It will be they'll both be very intelligent answers. One will be catered to what you're looking for from the perspective of what you would answer it as, or what you'd expect one of your team to answer it as. The other one is going to be very general. So that custom GPT is, I want to take you through a little bit of how I created that. And this is what this is today too, by the way. Build your own virtual construction. This is, you can go in there, take the, it's okay. You can take the construct, the bones of what I've done, tweak it. I did one more general, sort of an ownership level, or maybe a project manager of all trades. You can go and say, okay, what if I'm specific to electrical? What if I'm What if I'm in HVAC? What if I'm concrete? You create it accordingly. Okay, and do that, and you can create multiple of these. And again, these are virtual aids that's meant to take away some of those automated tasks that do some of those automated tasks are going to be painful for you to do, so that you can actually focus on more of some of the other stuff. Okay, so just think of it as an aid to helping with summarizing, documenting all these things that are painstaking. So the next time you get a spec sheet that's 500 pages, you want it outlined quickly, or you want to know what it's about, you have something you put in there, say, dump it in there. What is this? And it'll come back in your terms. So that's what that custom GPT is going to do. So that's the second half. I'm going to take you through the actual hands-on portion of it. So as going back to that first part of the first 60 minutes here, let's start right here with I'm Jack Infield. Been in the IT industry for a very long time. Going about 35 years now. Been in Arizona since college. Won't give you the exact dates, but it's been a while. And came out of here. I was a athlete at the U of A. Field Wildcats. My background was in computer science and IT. And we sort of, after a few years, fell in with the ABA. And some of the clients we dealt with were in this trade, and I really, really took to it. The culture, the sort of the atmosphere to helping all the businesses in this industry, especially in Arizona. And so that really kind of took us to learn technology and develop the IT side of that for this industry. So I can speak a little bit intelligently to both construction, not as well as most in this room, and technology. But that's my background here. So let's go ahead and jump onto that first slide. AI part one, fundamentals and practical applications. I'm going to jump to the next one. The basics of AI is what we'll cover today. This is the first part, that's 60 minutes. And again, the hands-on learning will be in the class. Getting started with generative AI box. Some of these terms will make a little bit more sense to you, and I express a little bit more sense to you. Okay. One of the things I will be giving out, and we'll be giving out a link with about, I think, 7 or 8 documents on there. One of it is going to be glossary terms that I consider to be important, put into layman's terms of what they are. So this is some stuff that you can take back and you can reference. And it won't all come right away, but you can go back to, oh, what was that, So you can look at that. There's going to be some other things that we'll be giving there, but that link will be sent out. It'll be on here as well, so you can take a photo, but you can also know that Gilbert and the team will be sending an email out that will include that with all that information. Diving deeper into prompting, applying AI construction to workflows, relevant here, working together, humans in partnership, take away a little bit of that fear. I think a lot of people will feel like it's coming to take those jobs, and I want to try to put that, alleviate that stress. And security best practices and AI use policy, and you'll never talk to an IT company on the face of the earth without the security at some level, but I'll try to keep that as minimal as possible. Next slide, please. So, actually go back one, jump off it for a second. I'm going to play my hand there. When I say what is AI, anybody here daring enough to take a stab at what they would say to somebody who is not from this planet right now, but somebody who doesn't have any understanding of what it is, what's going on, and you had to tell them briefly in a few sentences, what is AI? Anybody want to take a stab at that question?
I would say artificial insemination.
Wow. Yeah. No, but I mean, maybe using words that in. I don't know.
Was the original AI?
Yeah. And nobody daring enough to raise that. I know for a fact. Anybody on the teams want to jump on there or muted? No takers on what AI is. Right. Well, I asked that, and it is kind of an ongoing joke that in our industry in technology, that there's always a common answer to this question. And as a test to that, I asked my 14-year-old daughter, who's very bright, and my wife, who both answered the same way. I'm guessing some of the people in this room were looking for that. It's robots. And so now you go to the next slide. What is AI? I can say that by saying what AI is not. It is not Terminator. Okay. It is not some godlike self-aware entity mind in the hive out there watching over everything that I'm aware of. It is definitely not Tron, although MCP, which is a name in that, the brain blind, that actually is a programming language that is used in AI. And magic, it is not magic. It is math. Okay. So these are the common misconceptions of that. Okay. So it's just this intimidating digital godlike mind that knows it all, and I can't understand it. So we can go to the next slide. AI is software. Think of it that way. That's all it is. It's just software. Okay. It's software that's very special, that can do some incredibly interesting things that's unique than other software. When you think of traditional software requires a very specific input. Okay. When you write code for a software, we're saying, okay, and it gives you a very repeatable, very consistent and exacting answer. Spreadsheets. You go into a spreadsheet, you go into a cell, right? And you're going to write, you want to get a result back for, say, a formulaic cell. So, if you put in the right prompt, you put in the right, whether or not you put in enough decimals, the right numbers, maybe you actually put text in there. If you put in the correct formula, you will get the right answer consistently every time, like clockwork. But if you put in the wrong input, it will give you a bug. It'll come back and say, nope, error, cannot compute this. That will give you that consistently. But it's software traditionally. So it requires an exacting input. Now here comes AI. This is where it gets different. So AI is software. It's based on data. It's based on math, an equation behind that data to give you results. But where it differs is it takes in fuzzy information at the front, much more real world. We don't always have the exacting prompt we want to give to it. So it takes these language models in the back end, and really what AI does is it's three things. And we think it's this incredible technology that's shown up recently. It's been around for a long time. It started in the 50s. In fact, I would say AI is a goal. It was a goal to teach machines how to reason, how to become predictive, give us answers that we don't even know we want, or to think on our behalf. That's not there yet, it's not even close, but it's getting better. And so part of that was taking these language models and putting it into vast amounts of, so again, AI is three things. It's data, a huge field of data that you're putting in the back end of it. It's computing power, you need a lot of it, and you need algorithms, something to kind of write that or know that math that says how you take this language, how you take this information, this data, and turn it into something that's useful. Okay, so that's the primary core of what AI is built on. So it's software that does that. It's math. But what's interesting though is they took these, originally AI started, so in the 50s, we had the computers that were starting to become more powerful, kind of fell off a little bit. We didn't have the algorithms. We certainly didn't have enough data at that point. The 80s came back in, we started gathering more data, so we put that in there. But again, I think we lacked a lot of the algorithms. About 3 years ago, you saw chatbots come in, an interface so we could dive right into and deal with that data. Gives us an actual, that's where you saw ChatGPT come along, and then that's when it really took off. But again, this has been going since the 50s. Okay, just you could never get those three things together: the computing power, the data, and the algorithms all to play well. We just didn't have the sophistication, but now you're starting to see that marriage come together. So when when you say it as it's a fad, that's the fad has been going on for over 50 years. They just finally have the technology at a point where we can start to leverage it. But they've been working on this, and it's gonna keep. It's not going anywhere. So that language model started off with languages. Okay, so the languages would come in. They start putting in these different word vernacular of common people speaking these things. And as it built out these language models, which is why it's called that, it started to say, okay, now start to fill in the blanks. So when I go into a prompt and I put in something, I don't have to give it an exacting Excel-like formula. I can say, hey, could you please give me the time of what it is in the East Coast right now, or something like that, right? And different from Google, or different from actual search index, where it's going to give you links. Okay, it's going to show you those. It's not giving you an exact answer. This is going to give you an answer. Okay, so it takes that fuzzy input, and it's going to crank it. It's this data, and it's going to come back and say, okay, based on this, I think, and it's going to give you a very coherent answer specific to your question, and it's in its terms that it thinks you want to hear. It'll learn in that way. And that's why they call those learning models. So that's what AI is doing. Go ahead and actually let me. So I think of a construction analogy like an apprentice who wants to learn by watching and doing, they can handle similar tasks independently. Yeah, so it's just learning. It's just learning what you're putting into it and accessing the data we put in there and then giving it back to us in terms of what we can understand. It's saying, well, I don't think you asked this question the way you really think you asked it, but based on the millions of prompts I'm seeing, I think this is what you're trying to say, and we'll give you the answer accordingly. Again, that's very unique to software. I'm going to jump to the next slide. Well, I won't go through the pain of pounding you with all these terms, but this is, I gave in the takeaways that you have, one of this is about a 2 or 3 page document that just talks about some of the big terms you see in AI. And some of those I've tried to put it in common language, so it makes a little more sense to you. But going through here a little bit, I think this is important. What is AI based on? It's now come to generative AI. It started with machine learning going back decades, and in between that was deep learning. Okay? And without trying to get too involved or too far into the weeds on this, I think it's important. So machine learning, this is where that software got interesting. So machine learning was taking a lot of that data and saying, okay, we don't want to just do the traditional software build where you put an input, get it out. How do we start to actually learn from this data? So the way I look at it is weather patterns. Like weather patterns in, I don't know, Arizona, Yuma, maybe all parts of Arizona. And you say, okay, let's take a look at, we look at the statistics of what's the temperatures over 1,000 index points over this amount of time consistently. Let's take a look at that and measure that. Now, after a while, it's going to start to say, I see a statistical pattern here. So that when you go into it and you say to them, and it's based purely on the data you're putting into it. Okay? And that's what a lot of these AI just start off with. That's why they took a lot of time to put an unbelievable amount of information into the back end of these huge horsepower engines that could take this data and label and categorize it incredibly well. That's what the people developing software did. Okay, so now they say, okay, so I have 1,000 points of data on weather indexes in Arizona, if it have you. It can now, so now when you go back and say, hey, I'm curious on July 13th in Flagstaff, what would the temperature probably be? And it can say, based on this data, I think you can expect the temperature to be between this and this with the dry pattern of this and this. Oh, okay, great. That's what machine learning is. It's taking that data, using its brain to finally start thinking and say, hey, I'm going to compare it to all this information I have, and I'm going to give you back an answer that statistically makes sense. So again, it's not magic. It's just, but it's based on what you have in the engine right now. That's as far as you could go. It's not going to fill in the blanks. It's just going to give you back what you've given to it. Well, we jump ahead now to deep learning. Okay. Deep learning is layers. They started building levels. One of the big things they came across was on your phone. You want to take a picture of yourself, right? For security or something along those lines for bio recognition. It couldn't understand visual patterns. So machine imagery, like machine imaging and looking at that was a big hurdle they were trying to overcome. Well, they had to come up with more layers of data. So they had to put much more information into those databases, okay, label it accordingly. But now it started to say, okay, so the algorithms are more sophisticated. So again, I'm thinking of like, now it's not just, okay, I'm looking at a face. This person is smiling. I can tell he's smiling. The machine can say he's smiling because what it's doing is it's looking at those layers of information. Okay, it has eyes. It looks at the round circles, looks at the nose. Okay, this is a person based on this information. Now, based on the next layer, because maybe there's wrinkles here and this, it starts to look at each of those. And after it says, okay, based on all this data, this is a smile. And we can say that that's it. You couldn't do that with just machine learning. You had to go into deep learning where it's looking at layers of information, putting that together, and then saying, okay, now I can reason that this is probably an emotional state of this. That's how you got to where I can see not only is this a dog, but I think it's this breed of a dog, right? The one example I like to say on that, and we'll get into hallucinations on this, is it's going to give you back an answer, right? Almost every time. But what it will realize is because it's taking that information, it's got bias in the sense that it's not using our intuition, our judgment on things. So when they showed us a picture of a husky and a wolf, and this was common in AI, it kept saying, I can't tell the difference. Well, they look similar, but you think that with the detailed categorization and the organization of this data, it could start to spot the difference. What they found though was that almost all the pictures they were looking at, it was cold in the background. There was snow typically when they look at these images. Well, the AI doesn't know to differentiate any of those categories, any of those factors that it's taking in those data points. So it saw weather and said, wolf, every time, until somebody said, oh, okay, we've got to do a better job of categorizing this data. So now we go take weather patterns into consideration, say, okay, no, this doesn't happen. And we can have a cold weather dog in a warm weather state. So we add more information. But for the most part, deep learning was smarter. But again, you see that it's still looking at just data, doing the math, cranking it out, giving us back answers. It was just doing it at a higher level. Then we came to generative AI. What that goal really was of when they started to create AI is, I want you to create new content for me. I want you to actually think about what it is that I might want in the when it starts reasoning, okay? Giving me some context to certain things. So what it did was it came up with really, I would say it really started looking at what they call gaps in it. And what that is it trained it on probabilities. That's really what generative AI is. It's creating new ideas, new images. So you put in information, say, hey, give me this. It's still based on data, but what it's doing is it's taking your information and it's covering up certain words. So let's take a sentence and you say, okay, it's really hot, or it's really hot and I feel kind of, blank. Well, maybe it's sweaty or exhausted, right? You cover that word up and it keeps putting in different sentences, different paragraphs. And after a while, it starts to build up probabilities. Based on what this person has said, it's missing this piece of information. There's an 85% probability they meant to say this. We'll take that and we'll give that back to you. That's what's happening with generative AI. It's taking everything at an incredibly fast speed and looking at the probabilities of what you think it wants. So when I create a custom GPT and I put it in there and I say, okay, here's Ted the foreman, or here's my super, and I think he wants it. It's going to say, okay, based on as much data as you gave me, how much did you give me? Did you put in a lot of data specific to his trade, to the codes of security, safety codes? Did you put in how many eyes did you put in there consistent with what we do? As you put all this information in there, now I can come back and say, my probability of giving you what I think you want based on this profile is much higher. The danger with probabilities, though, is it will give you back an answer every time. This is where you get into have it on here. It's on the other one. So we get into hallucinations, which, well, it's a hallucination. It's an error. And we joke like, oh, the software, but this software, oh, it's just giving us this crazy stuff. No, it's giving you a probability of what it thinks you want because we're putting a fuzzy input into it in the first place. We're asking, not, can you calculate what 4 plus 4 is and give me the answer? We're saying, what's 4 and 4, right? That's something we say. What's saying what's 4 and 4? Well, it might look at that as two distinct. So it's looking at the probability, well, this 4, and it might give us a strange answer. It's not in math. And that's why notoriously generative AI is bad with math, because it's looking at order of operations. It's not looking at, do this step first, this step second, this step third. It's looking at the whole and then just filling in the blanks as we go. And then you're getting back this answer saying, whoa, what is this, right? And we trust it. And that's the danger, because it's these probabilities, it gives us back what we think. It's answering you in terms that are very sophisticated. It's using language that looks great. And so many times we get back the right answers that we don't think to really cross-check that. So then you look at it and go, where did he come up with this? Like, what is going on here, right? And so that's what happened. You're still dealing with the probability, which is why the human judgment portion of this is absolutely integral in everything. This is just a tool. absolutely a tool. It's your job to actually to really go through it and validate everything that comes across there, because those hallucinations, they're just errors based on it's not interpreting the input that you put into it. Now, if you get better, and we're going to do that today, at putting input in, that it's going to be much more accurate on, because you're now telling it, okay, let's not do 36 steps here. I'm being lazy. Do 3. Here's 2 more, and do this. Or in your prompt, I want you to do it in this order based on this. So, and by the way, I'm this person, and this is the role that I want you to play, AI engine. Okay, you're this person. I need you to answer it in this way. Okay. And once you answer it in this way, I want it back in this way. I want it as a table. I want it as an executive outline. I want it, what have you. Now it says, oh, okay, boom, boom, boom. All right, I'll answer those equations. So let's see, that's probability, training data. Again, training data, when we get into training data, I'll just go through it real quick. That's the data that we're putting in the back end of these AI engines, these language models. It's all the data that's putting in there. People worry about that because they're like, oh, it's my data going into the training data. We're going to have security. Yes, your data will be used to train unless you go in and turn it off. So that's so hey, if you get the paid version of any of these AI tools, if you get the enterprise or the pro, you can go in and say, do not use my data to train. Most of them, the categorization of somebody going in, there's people who wrote the algorithms, like in ChatGPT, it stopped a few years back. They had to let it go live. So now it's still taking information coming in. And that's when they talk about open and closed systems, why so many people like, the Procores, the PlanGrids, Microsoft, they have systems that they've locked it down, saying, okay, we're gonna provide this, but nobody can get into this. It's just for you. So maybe it doesn't have the vast reaching span of data, but it's still pretty vast and it's specific to you. So nobody can actually get access to that data, that intellectual property that belongs to you. Okay. So, but that's what that training data is. So it is using data to continually train it so that it can get better information. But it's nice to know that, okay, it's being trained by my information, in my system, not just a joke, the public. Chatbots is really just the interface, and that's what really made it take off in the last couple of years. That's what we write in there, and that's how we, the chatbot itself is not AI. It's just how we interface with the AI engine. That's what prompts are. We put the prompts into the chatbot. So the chatbot is where we put it. The prompt is, and then we're going to try to teach you the intelligent way of how telling it what you want. Okay. System prompt. That's important. Every system, ChatGPT, Claude, and Microsoft Gemini, it has system prompts within it. Okay, these are it's the internal algorithm coding that are saying, yeah, you're giving me a prompt, but we have our own internal prompts. Especially when you get into industry-specific tools, there's countless of them. It's going to be putting its own prompts in there, saying we customize this because we're going to also make it cater to you in your industry or what you do or whatever we say this product specializes in, be it medical, what have you. And so those system prompts are taking place on the inside of that engine, and you're taking that user prompt and putting it on the outside, and those two are married together. Okay, so that's what's happening. Using those system prompts is also tapping into software. So you think of it as a fuzzy input, right? Which is what the AI is doing. So we don't always have an exacting information we're putting in there, but in the middle of that, we want repeatable, consistent, exacting results. So we put software in the middle of that. Traditional software. On the end of it, we'll put another AI piece of that so that we can get back common language, expansive responses. So that, and then that's what that system prompt is doing. It's going in there and using the APIs to program everything so they talk together. Okay, and you can do it. People in our industry are doing it right and left. They're trying to write code for it. They're trying to create these prompts for it. But that's what's happening. You have prompts on the inside of the software, and you have prompts on the outside. Tokens. Not again, we're getting a little too detailed probably, but just so you know, that's how they charge. I mean, they work with most of these AI engines like the Claude or like ChatGPT. They work on tokens. It takes a large language model, I think, is around 100,000 tokens for it to run a process. Okay, so when you ask it something, say, okay, crank this out for me. That's what's happening. It's using all that information because it's using a huge amount of computing power, but it looks at it as in tokens. Well, as it runs out, it stops. So, okay, well, we tapped out here, or we're not going to any more resources to you, so you have to upgrade or pay for more. Some models have more, some have less. Claude, I think, has a little more than ChatGPT. Others have, some have, but that's ultimately what's happening. Is it's you. That's what they refer to as how much horsepower is being used by the actual engine itself as tokens. Okay. And then context engineering is just to get back into the prompting and saying, hey, the context. When I give you a request, I'm going to put a little more thought into it than just putting some. Hey, how do I write the proposal? Okay, well, you're going to get a very broad response. Let's write that prompt, context engineering, by saying, I'm going to give you some information. I'm going to write it in a very specific way, telling you what your role should be when you write it, what we're looking for in the output. Might even use it compared to something else. So I'm going to narrow that search and give you a much more focused look. So that's what context engineering is. So if you want to do that, that's it's sort of technology or a fire hose information from AI. But questions? Anything anybody wants to know about or specifically ask about? No. I had a $100 gift card for anybody to ask first question. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right. So strengths and weaknesses and limitations. Strengths are AI can do unbelievable amount of data. You know that it's the horsepower. Those three things working together: the algorithms, the data, and the computing power is just going to keep getting better and better and better. So this is going to, we get a huge, I mean, I'm shocked sometimes that it is kind of hilarious when you put in, let's say again, a 200-page spec sheet into something, ask for an executive, ask for a basic outline, and you get the response back in about 15 seconds. It's like, are you kidding me? Or hey, I want to look for a specific measurements on this, and this. Again, 20 seconds, you got that, right? How long would that take an executive aide or somebody in your team to go back there to go through 100 and 200 pages of a cryptic spec sheet to go through there to try to figure out, okay, what bold am I looking for? What am I looking at? Okay, so we need to fill this concrete crack away. This is shockingly fast and makes life so much easier for some of the tedium. So that's one of the huge strengths and why I suggest using it. It spots patterns humans miss, as I mentioned about the snow. There's things that it's going to see that you're not even thinking about, a perspective that you're not aware of. Okay? And when you're reading these things, you're saying, hey, craft this email, or hey, craft a toolbox talk for X and Y and Z. It's going to come back and you're going to think, oh, wow, interesting. I didn't even think about that. I should definitely include that information on there. So it's 24/7 and it handles repetitive tasks. And that's the other thing. It gets to iterative learning as you build more conversations, as you have the same thing open. Again, custom GPT, it'll start to learn who you are, what your patterns are, what you're looking for, what you do, and it'll get better at answering those questions because it'll see that it's learning from you. Okay. So, yeah.
We have a question online.
Oh, yeah.
Matthew Smith he said, you mentioned other programming associated with AI. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, Matthew. Other programming, again, I think what you're maybe alluding to is some of the specialized connections you can build with AI. And well, I don't want to guess what your question is, but when you're saying, are you asking, could you specify your question just a little bit more?
You can unmute yourself, Matthew.
Hey guys, you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm specifically, like you mentioned other programs associated with AI. Are you talking about programs specifically used by the contractor to support their workflow? Or are you talking about like some of the connectors and things like that with Google or Notion or GPT?
Yeah, all of the above. Again, there's right now countless documentation platforms that specialize just in AI. There's safety platforms. There's a multitude, and that's just in this industry. But yeah, I mean, the big players, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot from Microsoft. The bigger ones like that, again, I think of Procore or Bluebeam. they all have APIs that you can actually get in there and you can create connections to their software to leverage AI in various ways. Many of these private vendors have built tools to do exactly that. So that the nice thing about that is they can marry together. So you start to get that connection of, I want my Sage accounting to be able to talk to my estimating software, and I also like to be able to get time sheets put in there as well from the field. Well, that can all do that, and it can start to use those APIs to talk to whatever platform you're using in it. Whether again it's a Procore, but almost all of them have some subset now of AI in there. And when I was talking about the programming, that's how somebody like us or these different entities will create different AI tools to go in there and work with what you have, or if it's or not over there. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, that's it. I'm kind of looking for something that's more like off the shelf, ready to log in, that connects quickly, but it seems like it's just not out there, and it does take a customization type of piece to integrate that. But that pretty much answers the question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And just to answer, to go just a little bit deeper into that, and as we have about 20, 25 more minutes on this side of the house, as far as going through just the theory of it, that's a great question, because right now you have, look at it this way. Think of Google Maps, right? ChatGPT, Claude AI, a handful of things out there. Again, Microsoft, Google, the bigger players have their AI engine. Right? They're huge. I think of those as, again, a Google Maps. You want to go somewhere, you have the entire basically world mapped out for you, right? It knows where you're going. Now, it's not perfect. In some urban areas, it might not have this, but it's also public, right? Everybody on those roads, what have you. Well, and the data on that is brought in by everybody, okay? When you get into specific trades, like I want to do something specific to the contracting world, there's not as much data for these on just that industry. It just isn't. Think about the amount of data that had to be categorized, specialized, just RFIs alone, just going in there, all these different ways to go in there and categorize that information accurately, job site data. It's not there. So what they're doing is they're taking the models that from these other big players and saying, okay, well, this wasn't really written for us, but we're going to take that and use that over here. Well, it's not accurate enough. Well, now you're finally starting to see, again, the Procores of the world saying, no, we're getting enough data to where we can actually start to go in there and create the data set specific to this industry. It wasn't there before. And now that's what's exciting. And again, whether that's manufacturing, construction, the sub trades, you're starting to see software come out. When I go to these conventions, I'm seeing booths pop up right and left, from safety to you name it, to really to again AC to electrical. They're talking about, hey, we've got 4 or 5 tools that you can use that's going to do this, this, and this. It's going to make your life simpler. Well, the data is better now that they can actually take that and it's relevant. It's not just using information from somewhere else and trying to force it into this particular channel. Okay, so that's where I think you're seeing a big push. So when you talk about off-the-shelf software, like, I just want to be able to go buy this, I want to create this stuff myself. Well, one, I would challenge you, create a few things yourself, because one, cost-wise, it's in your best interest. But two, you'll get a familiarity with how to use it. You'll now know better questions and whether or not you should actually spend money on some of this stuff and how they use that. Because you'll say, okay, I kind of did this a little bit. I created a virtual assistant to do this. You're saying that, though, this will automate my emails or it'll connect over here. Okay, well, you're better at it probably, but you'll start to see a lot more off-the-shelf stuff now, because the data is finally catching up in the industry enough where that there's a return on investment for programmers to actually put the money into it. Or its cost is just too high. You try to create that data, label it, and put the time in, no software vendor is going to make their money back. Now they're finally saying, okay, there's enough data out there that we can do this. Probably mostly because of the training and people putting data into it that they're able to use. So just remember that the limitations, human oversight. AI is a tool. You can't replace judgment. So when you go out to a job site, the intuition you have, looking at, you know what, we're too fast here, I can know that. Or I see a crew over here and they've got 3 people that I can tell don't have experience. This is going to be problematic. I can tell that maybe one of the other contractors is running behind. We're not going to make schedule. All those things, yeah, I can't do. You just never know what's for project manager. They're going to say, I can use that judgment. it will go based on a perfect world, you back that information, but all those things, weather delays, scheduling, you think that that should be, it can route from A to B to C to D, right? Like, okay, here's here's a packet that we need to be able to send if something happens, like a change order, for example, maybe just the informational, okay, send it to, have it go back to the architect, have it go back to the trades, have it go back here. Right, you can route that information, it can help you create that. But to actually reschedule it and say, okay, based on this, I know that sub is never going to finish this thing on time, that, or if we have to go back and get approval, all those judgment calls you're going to have to make. Okay, and you're going to have to make an adjustment for it. So again, don't become too reliant on it. It's the human's job to oversee everything on this stuff and make those decisions. So, case we're flying. A little bit we just talked about. ChatGPT, the most widely known. It's the most general purpose one that we have out there. Claude is, I don't know if a lot of you heard of Claude. It's much bigger in the programming world. It goes into deep research. It's pretty slick, actually. So if I run the same query into both those engines, I'll probably get a 5-page document back in ChatGPT. I'll probably get a 25-page document back in Claude. Now, that's excessive sometimes, but it gives you a lot more detail. Sometimes that detail is very interesting if you have the time to go through there, and you can use the both. Say, okay, you know what? I'm going to grab this section out of here, pull it over here. So again, I have both, I use both, and I think they're both very useful. Gemini and the other thing too is keep in mind that both these allow you to lock down the security. You can say, hey, don't use me for training. Claude actually is the pro version, the paid for versions, that actually doesn't use it for training anyway, but it can still use it internally, I think. But Google and Microsoft, they're both good. I wouldn't put them in the same category there, but it's nice because we all have Microsoft ecosystems. So having something that plays with Teams and everything is already there, I think that'll grow and get better. And Google Gemini, it's in the Google workspace. So those people that are using that whole G Suite and all the Google tools, education is another one where that becomes very helpful. Okay, let's see.
Got one question.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier that it'll learn from you, your needs and the things you do, types of questions you ask, almost like it's picking up on your personality. Does it have a tendency to get narrow-minded? Like if one day you're doing one thing and next day you want to change hats? Will it kind of stay focused on what you have been?
So that's an interesting. A lot of people ask, like, when should I start a new conversation in an AI bot? Like, should I continue the same conversation? Should I keep going? It gets confused. This is, again, I want to be respectful of our time here. A couple of things are interesting when it comes to prompting. Is you get better at, a lot of times we put a lot of data into it. And after a while, it starts to get confused. So a good prompt, let's say you drop some data, you do some input, you put a couple of documents in there. What it's going to do is it's going to look almost always, because it's trying to reserve those tokens. It doesn't want to just crank through all those. So it's trying to be conservative with how it goes about and efficient and look for speed. So what it'll do is it'll look at the front of your prompt almost always with more weight. And it'll look at the end of your prompt with more weight. Okay, because it thinks you know what you're asking for right up front, and you're probably going to be specific about what you want in the output at the end of that prompt. It has a tendency in the middle to skip a little bit of that. So if you're writing a long document, there's a good chance the middle of it, it's not going to put as much focus on that. Now it will, depending on how you write it. But if you just write it out, you're just, okay, as you're thinking, not really, okay, I want this, you're kind of rambling a little bit, it's going to skip a lot of that. But even if you're putting a lot of detailed, good content in there, do it in multiple prompts. You would ask for specifics, right? Like, okay, I'm not going to ask you for 5 different takeaways or outputs on this. I'm going to ask you for one. Let's start with that. And then with that one, we'll take that. I'll use that to put it back in and say, okay, now based on this information, I want you to give me this. And you put it together yourself, as opposed to try to do it at once. Because again, when you do it all at once, it's going to miss some of that stuff in the middle. You will not get as accurate of an input. And that's just by design. Okay. The other part of that too is when you want to start a new prompt, and kind of like that. If you keep going on the same prompt and you keep going and asking that same conversation in that same chat, it's good. It'll create that, but it'll remember on a new chat, but it'll start to get confused. It'll start to look back and say, okay, well, I think you actually are contradicting yourself on something you said here. and you weren't consistent here. But again, remember, it's probabilities. It's going to go based on what it thinks the weight of what your answer should be. So you're giving it maybe conflicting information, or at the very least confusing information. It's going to go back and say, okay, this is what I think you want. And that's what happens. So that's where that context engineering becomes really important. Keep it more simple. Keep your outputs to more once, but you can be very, you can ask it for detail, and more detail is better, but sometimes you can go overboard. Writing, I want 14 things delivered here. You're going to get shaky results there, okay? So does that help?
Yes, big time.
But I mean, for just the one-offs, a couple of sentences, hey, I need help writing this email. Hey, can you take this email, write it into a LinkedIn? Okay, you can do that, and you can just write on that same continue. I've continued to chat for, weeks, like that, asking one-offs like that, because it's building off the same iterative information. But when I start turning, I start building that out that way. Okay. Common use cases for builders. Again, we can go into this a little bit more later, but on the second half, but drafting emails and correspondence, summaries are great. That's what it really started off with. Asking for a summation of spec sheets, looking for an outline or something, writing content. This is what it really does well. Really indexing and categorizing your information. Emails and correspondence, and again, routing, schedule, sending it from this to this to this, or putting that into work. It's great. Job descriptions and safety briefings. I'll give you a quick story real fast on job description. And that's when I say the human element. It's your job to oversee it. Okay. It's a great tool. It automates the agonizing stuff, the stuff that it's going to take you half a day before you get to where you actually do what you want to do. It can knock out in 20 minutes for you, or at the very least, it can get the ball rolling for you, right? Okay, summarize this. And by the way, here's a tip that I highly suggest. It's not a human, right? It's not going to get exhausted by you saying, give me a couple examples. Give me 20 examples of something. Give me 20 good options for this, right? Great. Maybe there's one or two in there you like. Take those two, say, based on these, give me 20 more options. Okay, you get 4 or 5 now in there, right? And that can be an outline, it could be anything. Now you start to say, okay, within half an hour, you've done a spectacular amount of agonizing grunt work that, okay, I've got the information outlined. I know what I'm talking about. I have an idea of how I want to say it. And I now know who the priority, where I should go with that next. Now you put that together. And that's what really, I would hope that that's where you make your money, that's what you're paid to do anyway, is to make those decisions with the content that's given. Fortunately, most of what we do in our daily lives is task driven. We spend most of our time doing the grunt work of trying to gather the information, even making an educated decision, which is so by the time you get there, you're so exhausted, it's like, oh, just whatever, This is saying, no. I want you to put your time and your energy into making the smart human decisions as an executive. Use your judgment, your intuition, all your experience. Let's get this other crap done for you quickly and efficiently and get it to you. So what you'd have like an apprentice assistant doing for you, or an intern, but is really good and never gets tired, and you can do for fairly inexpensive, almost pennies on the dollar. So that's where that really comes in handy. But so leverage that. And so again, there's almost nothing that I can't think of that you can't utilize this for. Summarizing long documents, answering other questions. But what I was going to say about the judgment is writing an employee job description. I think it was Amazon. I think got in trouble for this. They were using Gemini. They were using their AI to go out there and crank through a bunch of data for job descriptions. Right. Okay. I would go through the thousands and hundreds of thousands of data points of people who are A players. Who do we know that the skill sets for these job sets that really shine, that do well, right? And they ask these questions again. They built it out and say, okay, we want to go to the job description, and then we want you to take the first level of screening methodologies, right? And I want you to give us who matches this. So one, the job description is written accordingly based on what it saw in those data points. Then, which AI did, then went back and said, okay, now give me who we think filters out that first pass, right? Okay, great. What they found, and almost went to lawsuit, was that 97% of the candidates was like, were all men. It didn't realize that in looking at those attributes, again, AI is not looking at, it just noticed that in the programming, a lot of the software development side of the jobs they're looking at, it was a male dominated industry at this point. So it automatically disqualified all the women that were applying for those jobs, even though they had the skill sets that could do that. I was like, wait, why are you hiring only males for this position? Why did I disqualify? And then they went back and they took them a while to figure this out, realizing, oh, that's that sort of negative and lack of oversight. You're not looking at it from the eyes of us. We would say, wait a minute, no, I know that this person, I don't care if it's, what the gender is or what, it is based on what it's seeing on the historical data. And then it feels a probability and saying, this is who you've hired in the past. That's who we do. So be aware of that stuff. So it'll be very powerful, but you've got to use your judgment on that and oversee it. Start simple. And again, when we get into build your virtual AI employee for construction, or any skill set, really, professional trade, start with a problem. Start with something what is driving me nuts? What is something that is just grueling, putting together? Maybe a weekly task. You know what? I have to have a morning huddle. We have to do some sort of a summary meeting on this, jobs, whatever that is. Hey, can you create an outline for this? Okay, and just categorize it, send this out, summarize that, and then on the back end of it, what are the takeaways? Just give me 5 minutes of takeaways to send to the team via email, something like that. Just whatever you think could simplify something that takes you time to do that probably isn't going to get done because it's a pain in the neck. Use this. Just say, okay, you know what? Automate it. Just now it's easy. Be conversational but clear. Provide context about your role and ask follow-up questions. So this is an example. Explain in simple language what are the key considerations for the task. Help me draft an email about these are just examples of it. We'll go to the next one. The prompt, I've already told you what the prompt is. This is what we're actually putting into it. So it's like giving directions to a subcontractor. Clarity matters. The quality of your prompt directly affects the quality of the response. That's key. I mean, that really is it. The more you put into it, the more thought you put into this, and you'll get better at it. There's some rules of thumbs that you want to follow when it comes to creating prompts, like some basic foundational stuff, focus, like giving it a role, outcomes. What do you want it as, right? What's when you hit that when you get the end result, are you looking for a table? Are you looking for bulleted lists? Are you looking for a summary? As you start to ask that, and then we'll get into this too, but probably going out of order here a little bit, but because I'm not on the computer here. But yeah, we can wing it a little bit. Defensive prompting. I mentioned this earlier. This is really this is probably more important for you guys, I'd say medical too, than almost anybody else. Defensive prompting it will give you an answer, right? Every time. And it'll sound very, very convincing in what that answer is. Unless you say, if you don't know the answer to this, don't make up the answer. That's defensive prompting. Or you come back and say, I'd like you to list the sources where you got your information. Okay. These are things that you can start to do or give me a step-by-step breakdown of how you determined this solution. Those are things called defensive prompting. Now, if you just flat out at the end of it saying, okay, I've got to write up, I'm trying to write up, be careful with the bids, but okay, an RFI or something along those lines, or you're examining something like that and say, if you don't know, don't make up safety regulations or what you think is outdated, or go reference it here, or drop that document actually on those regulations into it and say, reference this document specifically for any reg, and set it to a timetable. Like, by the way, it's okay to go out and look on the internet for content. Don't go back past 2 years ago. Okay. Giving it a timetable is really important. Giving it again, that's when we talk about context, so like where to look at, where to get that information. The defensive prompting, do not make up information if you do not know. So it'll come back and say, I don't have enough information to give you an answer on this. That's what it'll tell you. Great. If you didn't do that, it's going to give you a very compelling answer that is very, very wrong. And now you're basing, something on a safety regulation that doesn't exist. Right. So, let me go to the next one. This is the building blocks of I was talking about. The role. you give the role to the AI. It wants to know, like, who do you want me to think as? Oh, you're a content writer for a construction company that we need to write some marketing emails or marketing content for. Okay, now I know, right? Or you're a project manager, specializing in healthcare for the commercial sector in Southern Arizona. That information becomes very powerful to it. Now it knows, okay, it actually has a much more specific role to look at. Context. What's the situation? We're working on a 50-unit apartment complex. Give me the step-by-step breakdown of how you determine this information. Then I can look at it and I can say, oh, okay, step 3, change that completely. All right, and then I'll reprompt it according to that, knowing that I'll give it a little more order of operation. So, go ahead, next one. Progression. Basic. Write a safety reminder. Better. Write a safety reminder about ladder use. Even better, you are a safety coordinator. Write a brief safety reminder about proper ladder setup for residential framing crew. Keep it under 150 words. Giving it how many? Here's a random question for you. How long is the average email? Nationally speaking. It's just, again, not even in this particular trade or this industry, but how many words do you say is the average email? 50. 50? Okay. Any other takers? Somebody's got to guess a number. We want to throw like 6 million out there. What?
350.
350?
Matthew says 300.
300. Okay. I was kidding about those $100 gift cards, by the way. What do you think? The average email is a little over 400 words.
So 400 more.
400. Now, the most effective emails are probably in that 200 to 250 range. Informational, but clear and concise. Typically, we're not clear and concise. All right. So, knowing that, keep it under 50 words. That is straight and to the point. No fluff. Right? And you can tell it. Write this in professional terms. Write this in common vernacular. Okay, that's another thing you can say. Tell it, I want you to speak to it as this, right? But if you're writing something because somebody, let's say, a change order is taking place and is costing you to back it up, and you come back, or somebody's making a price quote change, you come back and you say, no, we're going to write this in very professional terms. Label out what the outcome, what's going to happen here, what the next step should be, from your perspective. So, keep that in mind when you're writing that. And then you are a safety coordinator, write a safety reminder for Qual's toolbox about ladder setup for second story framing. Great. Use conversational language for experienced framers under 150 words. Include 1 statistics and with 1 actionable tip. You see, you can get very specific, but your mind starts to think in those terms of like, okay, this is what I want. Iterative prompting. I won't spend much time here. We kind of already spoke about this. AI remembers. You can refine without starting over. It's more natural than creating a perfect prompt first time. So that iterative means it's conversational. Each time you talk to it, it remembers. Talk to it again. But that's the negative. It remembers. So again, if it gets too long, you'll start to contradict yourself. So you have to be aware of that. Okay. This is just, and I've got grab this here real fast. I'm seeing my notes. This is just some of the use cases. And again, you'll have access to, I'll make my slides available to everybody. Okay? So you'll have access to those along with everything in this presentation. Yeah, so You say project management. So where do you use AI? Where can this be? Whatever the tool is, however you want to use it. Project management. The most common, this is just common bullets. Schedule optimization, resource allocation, progress tracking. Progress tracking is a big one. You need to know, again, be careful about scheduling with that, right? But project tracking, like where are we at in the process based on information coming in, what's going on, this is where we're at. It'll actually track that job for you, giving you a baseline framework of that. Estimating and bidding, takeoffs, labor calculations, that's really, really helpful. Historical cost analysis, you know, there's a lot of data out there. Most of the contractors that I deal with have a spectacular amount of data out there that is not labeled, not categorized. It's just there. Somebody uses it, but you know, if they have to look it up, they can. It's very manual process, Excel spreadsheets. This is nice where you can actually go in there and start to say, okay, let's start getting that data, putting it together for our company and start to get some historical cost analysis. Where are our margins? Where are we killed out there? What is going on in this part of it? Now, this is not an imperfect tool now, but what it is it's impartial. It's just taking all that data saying, here's your trend analysis tied to where you're spending and where you're not spending and where you're losing time and money. And that data's there for you more than likely. Okay. That's where some of those tools we talked about, specialized industry, are coming out to help you look at that specific to this, knowing where those percentages and margins should be in that particular aspect. Safety and compliance. This is great. Toolbox talks, safety play generation, hazard identification, regulations tied to OSHA. I mean, this is, you know, just the other day, like, we had somebody in here talking about that marijuana use. He's sitting down saying, so you come in and maybe you use Zoom or something to record that, go back, say, hey, I need you to outline the 5 or 10, give me an executive outline of this so that I can use it in my own meetings on safety tied to marijuana. Great. It'll give you an outline, right? And you come back and say, now I'd like to generate an acceptable use policy for marijuana use here for internal purposes. Great. Put that together. Maybe you take that to litigation and you get that separated up. Maybe you just take that and use that as a grounds for teaching or training internally. But that's the sort of thing you can start to do tied to security and really in any capacity. Communication, client updates, RFI responses, meeting summaries. AI is getting really good at not just creating that content, but actually routing it. You get into agents where you have workflows. Hey, once we create this, I not only don't want you to create this agent, but I want you to submit this to my Outlook and send it out on a weekly basis. Fire this off every Thursday. I want an update meeting sent to project team. This, and this. And I want, and you know, whatever that is, and it just becomes automatic. Like it goes out based on all they have to do is put their notes and data in there. That goes back out. You don't even have to have the meeting. You just go back and you can, you know, respond to that or have a meeting based on what you're seeing on that. Okay. Actually, communicate. Is there anything on here? I just threw 4 up there. There's stuff tied to, you know, project management, safety management, business development, marketing, proposal writing, LinkedIn and social media posts, which again is very helpful. You know, about job site photos. You want to share those, right? Maybe with the team or internally or externally, getting those taken and actually. It can actually, remember, it's machine vision too. It can actually look at the job site photos, look for irregularities or common issues. We're using those a lot. Summarize that. But again, you can start to put that stuff out there. Superintendents in field, daily report, narrative assistance, subcontractor coordination emails, material order checklists, quality control documents, weather delay documentation. That's probably good for you, Lori, if they're out there on that weather delay documentation. Progress photo captions and descriptions, as I just said about photos. Closeout documentation. Again, I'll include my notes on this too, so you guys have that because there's a lot of stuff that I'm not right here just for time's sakes. We're running a few minutes over in this first house. I want to wrap this up. So next one. This was one that they was asked. I think it was Matt. Was it Matthew? Matthew asked a little bit about that. Here's a couple tools coming down the way. I mean, these are just a couple that I chose. Procore, they're juggernaut. They're doing a lot of work with this. I like what they do. I'm fairly confident that they're doing it well. Open space is documentation. Again, these are all specific to construction trades. Atlas Technologies, sequencing optimization, doing things one after the other, connecting things. Doxel, computer vision for progress tracking, as we just talked about. One thing that generative AI is getting really good at is looking at actual injury and getting that data and saying, this is what we're seeing on your job site. Let's analyze that. Daily, build robotics, autonomous equipment, toggle, automated rebar design. I could put a list of 500 on here. That's what's coming, So again, that's why I want to see the foundation. Then you go look at these and start playing and start asking the better questions. Go into Claude or chat, say, hey, I'd like to see what tools are out there specific to this that are being reviewed, whatever. Ask that. It'll give you that information. Then you can do your research on your own. Use ChatGPT Claude for daily tasks, drafting emails, learning support. Use the ask questions. Ask questions about AI. When you get in there and say, hey, I was at a training, Jack mentioned that I can turn off, but so what do you recommend for security if I don't want my information to be out there? Oh, go into turn off capturing your information for training purposes. It'll walk you through the process. It'll even say, do you want to see our terms of service? Yeah, I would. I'd like to take a look at what's being used and how it's being used. It'll walk you through that. Share successful prompts, create guidelines, identify impact uses. This is good. Team adoption. It's a team issue. I mean, that's where customized GPTs comes in nicely. You can share with everybody. You create something, use something wrong, say, I've got the email writer for us. Share that. Fill the prompts. And again, I'm giving you a prompt guide, by the way, that recommended prompts with examples of things that make sense. Look at how they're written, the context of it, and then apply it accordingly to wherever you want to. Okay. Tool integration. Evaluate specialized construction AI tools, measure ROI, scale based on results. That's where I said, after you start playing with it, learning it, download the software. It's cheap. I mean, $20 is really not a bad cost to get in on this and understand what's going on. That's what it is a month. Look at those problems, start using best practices, ask those questions, and then evaluate. Start looking at when people start looking at that. Don't just discard, be intimidated by it or not want to actually look into those tool sets because you're intimidated by it more. So no, actually, I think this could be really useful. In fact, why aren't you using this at this point? Next one. I think we went through this. They're human roles, they're replaceable. You make the decision making. The AI is supportive. Simply it's pattern recognition, preliminary analysis. It is taking all the mundane and making it automated so that you can do what you need to do. Okay, next one. Security best practices. I'll just leave it. Beware of putting stuff into the models before you look at big public models, and any model really. Don't put that information out, just like an email. You don't want to put proprietary information in there. Personal private information, PPI, like stuff on social securities, even just using your own information, like I'm this company, these are our financial records. Those hallucinations happens. If it gets hacked, something happens to that information. Somebody else could do a search on, by coincidence, like, hey, I'd like to know on, Mahoney does this with chat, and maybe it gives you information that is proprietary because somebody on your team put that out there. You got to be aware of that. And that's why I have actually created two acceptable use policies. We worked on it. I'm going to give those to you today until you take back. One is just a couple pager. It's a little bit more for internal use. Go through that. You can cater. I've made it so you can cater it towards your team, saying, hey, here's things you should do and shouldn't do. Okay. More than anything, it's just putting a document where I'm saying, be aware. Right, from the company. It's just not something where you just go out there and put anything you want in there on behalf of the company and share that information, because again, this data can get leveraged. And it's software. Software can get hacked. Okay, it can hallucinate and give it bad information or give your information out to somebody. So the other part of that, the other acceptable use policy was a little more detailed. I gave you something that is a little closer to what you can use contractually. You don't do it unless you take it to to your internal legal team and have them look at it, of course. But it's something that gives you a little more breakdown. Yeah. So those will be included in the packet that I sent to you. So you'll have those use policies. So this is what that was. Just set those clear expectations for employees and make them aware that there are risks tied to anything. Good prompt, security first. Start small with a pain point. Build from that. Always verify, and you'll get better as you use it, like anything. Okay, so that's if everyone want to take a quick break. we'll jump into the hands-on section.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the higher end, I guess, like. It looks like it. Like, that's all I never noticed. Like,
T minus 60 seconds here.
You going to that?
yeah, but, yeah.
Thank you. Based on how.
No, yeah, they're doing a great job. No, it's a great presentation.
AI is just, it's actually do that. Oh. It's about algorithm.
Most of the time, what it's doing
You would think that like that, it's
is
even-
cross checking. It's all, it's working off of the data. So, yeah, so.
That's a fun thing.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. So the second part is, and I've given you, so we'll follow along here a little bit. Like, down the road, maybe it'd be cool to be able to do, everybody bring in their laptops and we do more of a hands-on session so you can create your own. Like, I've created a custom GPT, and for the sake of speed, I'll go through it, but I'm going to show you how I created it, what I did. And does anybody know what I mean by when I say custom GPT?
No.
I'll start there. So GPT. So when you talk about a prompt, when you go into actually, let's start here. I just wanted to show you real fast the AI acceptable use policy that I want to share with you. So this is what it looks like. It gives you a little bit of key AI terms, ethical principles of AI use. This is just, I think it's 3 pages, your responsibilities. Again, talks a little about access to information, keep going down further. Prohibited uses, unauthorized access to corporate data. And also, this is important, you scroll all the way down there. The list of approved AI technical systems, this is good to have as a baseline. Your list might be longer. I just do some on there as a chat GPT or Clyde and AI. There's a lot of AI out there that's video based. They might be using that. So you can put stuff on there and say, this is an approved use. That's tough to guess all these, but again, better to put a blanket or filter over it and say, these are approved. If it's not, come check with us. Okay. But just going through this and having somebody sign up on it. Now, again, I have 2 of these that I'm giving to you. One is much more robust, triple the size. But having something that you have in there, I think is a good framework to have. It's good practices so that you put it out there, let everybody know. And it starts with, you kind of reviewing that for the company. So, let's go and open up. Good one. Yeah. I'll get back to what a custom GPT is in a moment. Here's that prompting sheet instruction. So this is one of the takeaways I want you to have. And rather than you saying, okay, use my judgment, give it more information, it's nice to have something as a framework to work around. Imitate, then innovate. Use some of this. So there's 3. When I say framework for prompting, focus, tell AI your role in context, not your role, but what do you want the AI's role to be, right? I want you to think as, okay? When you tell it what that role is, your role, project type, location. You're a project manager at a GC working on a hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, an estimator. Okay, so there's your focus. Part 2. State the specific task. Summarize, extract, list, analyze, draft, create, compare. Whatever it is you want to give it as instruction. When we create this, you'll see it get pretty involved when you create those instructions. The more you're worried about giving too many instructions, if it's specific to the task to what you're looking for, you can get pretty detailed, especially when you want to get a detailed answer. So summarize Division 3 concrete requirements from the uploaded spec, which I've put in there. Okay, and over that. Extract all HVAC inspections and present a table. refinement, control output and protect yourself. So again, these are the three: focus, instruction, refinement. Format, that's where we talked about the defensive prompting, right? So at the end of this, you ask for all this information, put in some spec sheets, put in some safety regulations, your compliance restrictions, and come back and say, if you don't know, do not fabricate the answer in any aspect of this. That's that safety valve, right? Then you say, okay, good. Or at the very least, source your information. And they'll come back and say, okay, and you look at something like, that's not a standard anymore. You know, that was defunct 3 years ago. So 7 golden rules. Say supports 1 prompt equals 1 task. That's where, you know, be careful about asking for 14 different tasks at one time. Okay. It'll do it. You just won't do it well. Okay. But it'll sound really impressive. Defensive prompting, use that a little bit. When to use, okay. Ready to use templates. So these are the ones I was talking about as far as me giving you some examples. Okay, so that rather than to rewatch this and write down everything verbatim of what I'm saying, I've done that. So document summarization. And these are just basic prompts. I'm not trying to get too advanced. I'm just, hey, this is the quick ones. And some of these you want to create a cheat sheet, right? Just print out a basic prompt. I want a document created. All right, you're you're a project manager on a new build, whatever, or whatever it is. Summarize document, which you put in there, or summarize a document, an executive summary, an outline, focusing on whatever safety aspects. Format as, give it me a bullet, give me as tables, keep it under, you want it to be 27 pages. Maybe you want it to be, keep it under 3 pages long or X amount of words. Right? Highlight unusual requirements or issues. That's something that you want to. So that's often what's very, very useful is when you're going through 100 pages of document, find the anomalies. Anything that stands out to you as irregular. It does a good job of doing that. That might save you a lot of time and effort on that. If anything is unclear, note that where there's ambiguity. Yeah. Information extraction, very good too. This is the sort of thing where it saves you a spectacular amount of time. I don't want to go through 75 pages of this document like this. Okay, so your role working on it. So again, listed in columns, review the document again to ensure completeness. It'll go through in a matter of minutes and probably less than that. Draft generation for RFIs, email reports, schedule, risk analysis. We can keep going down a little bit. These are all the context of how to write those prompts, okay, in any search engine. And that includes something specific to, like, again, industry standards like Procore. Even though they have their own system prompts, this doesn't change. You're still going to want to write it in the same methodology to get as much accurate data back, okay? So if you think about that, if you're working on something that's giving you specific information in your trade, and you're giving the specific information what you want from that, you're really dialing in what you want. Calculations, just so you know, if you're getting into anything that's requiring calculations, I need the cubic feet or I need the specs on how much square footage of this, ask it for steps, right? Do it like first calculate what is the total square footage of this building. Okay, now after I do X, what do you predict I'll need for this? If I have 20% happen or loss on this material, what is that going to look like, or how much will I need to? So you break it down. Don't do it all at once, because again, that's where it says it's not necessarily looking at it like it's looking at it just filling in those blanks, and it might not do it in the order that you might think, and all of a sudden you're getting this crazy answer back of like, what, 10,000 square? What are you talking about, right? Order of operations, and then again, ask it. Give me the step-by-step down breakdown of this, and it'll show you. You did this out of order. So ask it, try to help it by doing those steps for it. That's one thing that, again, it doesn't always excel at, and that's complex. Okay. It'll do it, but you want to do it in piecemeal. Estimators, keep going down a little bit. We don't have to go through all these, but keep going. Superintendents, quality managers, chain of thought. This is what I was telling you. Break it down, that order of operations. Multi-step calculations, complex analysis, planning with dependencies. Do one portion of it, get the result back, leverage that to do the next portion of it. Put that back in, do it that way. You'll get a much better response. Okay, we're good on that. So that's your prompt cheat sheet. And so A lot of those are going to be kind of similar with a little bit of tweaks. So once you start doing a few of those, you get a feel for like, oh, okay, great. And then as a comparison, I'm somebody who likes to kick the tires, just write in your prompt the way you normally would. And I'd like to get this back, right? And then look at the response difference, right? You can see a massive difference. So, okay. So can I close this one out? The let's see, where's that? Lost me real fast. I mentioned that I'm going to give you some terms, just to look at so it makes sense. This is what that looks like. So let's just take glossary of a lot of other stuff. What is an LLM? I mean, you can just search for it, but again, looking through there once in a while, like keeping a little cheat sheet, it's helpful. You go back and look at MCP. What is that? We talked about that on that question. Programming interface adapted for AI use, providing access to data, services from other systems, enabling multi-turn chat and supporting AI. It's a plugin that allows AI to use that software that you want to use, be it Sage, be it Bluebeam, or whatever. So like CAD, that's what you're using that MCP protocol, which you don't need to know, but that's how those start to interlink, and they're using those, leverage those. Okay, that's what those algorithms programmers are doing, so that you don't have 4,000 disparate systems. Okay, so anyway, this is a machine learning, all this stuff, linear regression. Linear regression is interesting in that it's kind of like we talked about that order of operations, iterative prompting. When you get into linear regression, things when you ask for things like that make sense, which is what you're prompting, like if I do X, will I get Y? And these are related, right? I'm looking to do this job on this time of weather. How many people do I need for the job? But if you're saying, I want to look at a dog, and then you ask it, now, tell me about this cat. It's a hard term, right? Wait, it has problems with that. Just like cluster analysis too. So you want to cluster similar questions and similar information together, similar data together. Like I said, it'll miss the middle of it, and it's going to do its best to guess on what's important. It's not going to know. So again, that linear regression of keep things that in order, that conversation makes sense. If you start creating a conversation, then you do a hard left turn and say, hey, my kid wants to know, well, what's the best foods to go to Disneyland? Yeah, to pull you, but it's going to start pulling you out of that conversational, so just be aware of that. That's when you start new prompts. Okay. Let's go. These are all ones I'm going to give you how these for your research. I'm sure you're going to go home and just go through these in great detail. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to start by open up the chat. Oh, I'm sorry, the build your virtual employee. So this one I'm pulling up from the chat right here. We'll start up here. We'll jump around a little bit. How many in here have used ChatGPT? Okay, no shyness. Let me see those hands. Come on, who's used it? All right. Now, who uses it frequently? Okay. Have you used? Has anybody else used? Was that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't put my hand up, but I do. I use it occasionally, like probably 3 or 4 times a week at least.
Really? Well, Lori, you can keep your mic on for a minute. I'm curious. How do you use it tied to the business? Or just in general?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've used it for like the other day. Last week, we put a job ad up and I had it create a job description for me, and then it created the ad. I've had it do, like we're in the middle of creating a company playbook, and I think Matt uses it probably way more than I do even, but I'm
using it right now.
Yeah. We use it for those menial tasks. A lot of the writing. We've even used it to send letters out to our clients to polish our letters. Yeah, but we're just scratching the surface.
I'd say, I mean, the playbook is fantastic. You can keep it unmuted for a second, or I was going to ask a question. When you're creating that playbook, are you tying that to like multiple facets of the business, or is it very specific to one particular area? You still with me, Lori?
Yeah, right now it's one specific area that we're creating the playbook for, but we're planning on building a much more involved and comprehensive playbook.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for sharing. Playbook's a fantastic idea. That's a perfect example of people get ambitious and say, help me create a playbook. Here is an obscene amount of information that I'm putting in here. Here's a bunch of estimates that we do. Here's job information. Here's some of our pricing. Here's some of our here's some of our operational procedural stuff, right? Okay, can you create, based on, you want to create it chapter by chapter. Okay. If you were going to actually, what I would actually start with is, if I was going to create a playbook for a concrete company in Southern Arizona, what would you recommend as far as the outline or categories and chapters, right? It'll then come back and you can look at that and say, okay, interesting. All right. So it says start off with safety procedures, maybe tie it towards, the pre-construction phase of estimating, right? And then you build each of those playbook chapters out specifically, right? That's where it becomes very powerful. And you put in the information tied to each section. And then at the end of it, you can say, okay, here's what we put together. I want to marry these together and complete a comprehensive playbook. But that's where that order of operation, that complex thought, the chain comes into play, right? So great, fantastic thing to do. And playbooks often don't have to be comprehensive like that. I would almost suggest they should be specific to certain aspects, whether it be marketing, sales, be it, project delivery, whatever that is. So. Okay, step by step, custom GPT. You go to, I asked who used ChatGPT because when you go there, almost you've seen a search window, and I can bring this up. Bring up the other one real fast. ChatGPT. Oh, no, sorry. I think it's in the other police window. I can put it on. Yeah, maximize that request. Okay. Let's get what is the weather today in Tucson? What would you expect to do tomorrow? So, just for those who haven't seen it, it's not very different than, and you don't worry about fixing misspellings. Yeah, fuzzy inputs, right? So there you go. It's going to answer that. If this was wrong, it had no idea, it would give you a very compelling answer just the same. It would say it is currently 32 degrees, and tomorrow we expect it to be 37. And you probably look at it and go, oh, okay, well, it's fact. It's not. You got to check this stuff, all right? So 75 degrees sunny, warm sunny. And did we tell it how we want this information? Give it to us. Say, look at this as a weatherman rule. Because again, it changed how it gives us to us the details that we get, right? It was probably giving us historical data analysis of previous Let's call them, I want to give you an example. You go in there and say, hey, I'd like to know what I should be spending on liability tied to X in Tucson on my building, or what does this look like? Or what can I expect what is the increase in cost going to be, what have you? It'll give you a lot of information. Now, I go in there and say, actually, I want this custom GPT to be called Tad, the Wizard of Insurance, right? Who's worked in the industry for over 20 years, is experienced in the fields of construction insurance, cyber liability, all these different things, right? I'm very handsome and pleasant to be around, right? But you give it, you all, and I joke about that, but you can honestly give it a personality that you're dealing with, because that's it's going to answer back. I speak in professional, dry terms. I'm a no-nonsense individual, or actually I'm a very, very easygoing, lax person who speaks in common vernacular. You give it all this information. Now, when it drafts an email for you, when it drafts a content, it's going to do it in those terms, in the profile that you created for it. Now you go back and say, okay, here's my job role. I always look at it in this way, right? This is where I live. This is what I do. This is what, and these are what's important to me. These are my pain points that I really hate to see, right? So it'll be looking at your prompt through those eyes. So you create all that, which starts to get a little more involved, which is why I created a little packet for you on how to answer this. You create that, and now you actually have a virtual assistant. So now you go and you put that information in there. Hey, I need you to draft X. It'll do it from that perspective. And it's a big, big difference on that. Okay, giving a toolbox talk on ladder safety from that person versus just putting into a prompt. Even with good prompting, you'll get back a completely different answer. It'll actually, because of this one, you've gone in there and given it, hey, put some additional documentation in there, put a couple of codes, what information, what other packets are tied to my job role. And again, it'll go back and it'll really give you that detailed information on a regular basis, consistently every time. So you don't have to worry about, is this conversation getting to you? No, you're using the actual prompting itself is how it will always answer in that term. You can adapt that, you can add new ones. And I would caution you from trying to get too broad in those profiles, right? Because then it's defeating the purpose. You want to have it a little more narrow focus. So having said that, that's what a custom GPT is, right? You'll hear something they talk about later called agents. Well, agents are kind of like custom GPTs. Only that's more on the programming side. People like software developers, people in my industry, who take these customized GPTs and they create and they marry these things together. So like one is going to the next one, going to the next one, putting it into a software package. So now it's actually doing a chain of things for you. Okay, and that's what the bigger software vendors are doing. They're creating these agents. They do all these things in the back end, but they're made. The principle is the same with which you're going to be done with the custom GPT. And I would challenge you to try to go home and if you just do the quick and dirty, half an hour back, great one. It's pretty straightforward. If you want to get a little more involved, like for example, me, I know Claude analysis, like Claude AI gives me more details. So sometimes I'll put a prompt in there saying, okay, here's what I think what I see as an estimator in Southern Arizona who does this, this, and this, create this profile, but I'll put them to Claude and it'll give me 20 more, it'll give me 3 more paragraphs. I'll add that back to the profile back in Chat GPT and I'll have more information. Again, the more data, the better. So then you put this in there and it creates a really big profile. So you can start to get more advanced through hybrid of things like that. But let's go to the first page here. ChatGPT, that's probably on most instructions is general use tool. Okay. Loads up the documents, but I think it's up to 10 documents that you can add at any one time specifically. Again, it's a good concept for content marketing, general tasks. Really jack of all trades, so to speak. Claude Pro gets more into development, deeper reasoning. Gets into really, really heavy rationale things. So if you want something to really analyze it, look into something, it'll take longer, but it's a really powerful tool. Copilot gets into the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, as does Gemini with Google. Okay, a little less, I think it's got power, but again, I don't know that it's quite at the same level of the two yet. Let's go to the next page here. Okay, build your custom GPT. We're at the about 15-minute mark, and I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly, unfortunately, just because I might need more time for questions at the end. But I want you to be able to go home with this. If you do nothing else, I think this would be an excellent exercise for everybody here. Okay, step by step, build your custom GPT. What you'll need, you'll need GPT plus account, so you'll need to spend the $20 at least. And it's month-to-month subscription, so you just spend the $20 to keep your tires. And then, if you don't feel the value's there, great. I would be surprised if you didn't find the value. 30 minutes of focus time, knowledge of your target market and clients. I would hope that many of you at least have that at some point. And then it says after that, probably 15 minutes per one. Now, again, you can take an hour, depending on just how sophisticated you want to make that, how much research you want to do to build a profile, right? I challenge you to do it, but just again, don't try to make it perfect the first time. Just create one, right? I want an email writer. Just want somebody to do this, try. Define your market. Okay. This teaches you, there's 3 basic steps here. Define the market, define your avatar, who this person's going to be, who's going to be creating this, okay? And then you put it together and it creates your custom GPT, all right? So first one is define your market. This teaches your AI employee about your specific market, so it creates relevant content that resonates with your client. So how do we do this? Here's a blog we'll be checking back. So before I go to that, what we do is prompt. You're going to go into this and say, please create, the instructions are open ChatGPT and start a new chat, right? Copy and paste the prompt below, which is here. We'll be good for the next step. Copy the entire output, and then once the output comes out of what you asked it for, you're going to copy that and you're going to put it in your Word document, okay? And you're going to name that Word document market-profile.docx. And that's going to be something you put into that custom prompt. And again, I'll walk you through it here. You can do the same thing for your avatar, but it starts with just some basic information of, please create a detailed business profile on your target market. What is your target market? And your geography. So for example, commercial general contractor specializing in healthcare projects in Arizona. Because Arizona, maybe you want to go more specialized in geography, Southern Arizona. You could go county in, maybe I want to say Pima and Maricopa County, right? Whatever it is. Your target market. Focus on, and you could actually just copy this in as is, like typical project types and sizes, key operational, focus on, and you're telling it. So I said you could put this, you should put this in there. Key operational challenges, technology needs and pain points, common risks and concerns, decision maker roles and priorities. You can add more to that, but it's going to look at that and say, okay, these are the criteria that we need to focus on when we're creating the your market type. Okay. Keep it focused on what matters to the business operations and profitability. All right. So that said, I did that. Let's go here and open this up. And again, when you do that, is you go to so you do a new chat up here on me, and you take this information and that I showed you, and you copy that. You just do a copy, and you literally paste it in there. Okay. Yeah. Once you copy and paste that, and so let's do that with that. So I would go in here and I'd say, okay. You go here. You paste it in just like that. Now you'd want to figure, you want to fill in your target market and you want to fill in your geography as much as you can, right? So again, if I said on let's see. I don't even have to fix the line because I don't know. But it bothers me.
I feel you.
Hmm. Okay, just like that. Nothing else. This is just a down under like the quick 20-minute knock it out.
That answer now button means just give me what you got right now. Okay.
Based on those, on that profile of general contract, in the commercial industry. I say construction, I meant to say commercial, but you get the point when it goes back.
Would you get different answers if you, like, so it's thinking, if you bypass its thinking and say answer now, you'll get different information?
You want to let it figure, the next prompt you'd want to change. And say, okay, it's interesting, but I'd like to refine the search to this, and you change it accordingly. You stop and you move to stop. You can stop it if you're like, oh, you're going down the wrong chat. Just cancel it because but it's so fast, it's really not an issue. And if you're doing it in Claude, it's taking some time. You might want to say, okay, wait a minute, we're looking for the wrong thing.
Do you use deep think for everything you use on ChatGPT?
If you're doing analysis, then yeah, it's a good thing to do. I don't think a little longer, but it just depends on what you're looking at. Again, anything that requires research to look into, that's a good thing to do, especially if you're doing like contract analysis comparison, things like that, and then you want to use it against a standard. That's a good way to go. But test it. You'd be surprised at the results you get if you give it good information to begin with. So, who they are, regional context. Arizona's commercial building market remains active with Phoenix as top tier U.S. crane city, and construction costs in 1 year. Contractors are navigating public and pipeline delivery methods. Maricopa. This is all stuff that you're going to take and you plug into your custom GPT. You're not taking anything. Okay? So then, down a little bit, local owners and programs, typical project types and sizes, healthcare, institutional, civic, commercial, and industrial, use retail, light industrial warehouse, typical scale. Now you can change it. You come back and say, oh, you know what? We don't deal in healthcare. Remove that or delete that from this. Because you're going to copy and paste this. Okay, you're just going to copy paste all of it. Keep going down. Key operational challenges, technology needs and pain points. Let's just take a look at one real fast. Cost control forecasting. Our study shows a significant share of projects run over budget without robust digital cost management. In this geography, GCs prioritize connected budgets, buyout tracking, and change order cycle time reduction. Okay, great. Probably accurate. So keep going there. Again, this is fairly general right now. Common risks and concerns, how they lose money. Think about it. This is what your custom GPT, John, is going to be looking at your prompts as, right? This is what's concerning to them. Decision maker, this is who they're maybe talking to, right? What works, it drives margins. Takeaways. So once you're done here, you would copy this whole thing, right? And then you'd save that as your market dash profile. It's saved somewhere. Put that, okay, so okay, done. Now, next step is you go in there and you create your ideal avatar. All right. So let's go back to another. And we're coming up on just a few minutes before, so if you need to leave, you're not going to hurt my feelings. So, create your client avatar, 5 minutes. Instead of writing generic construction companies, now you're saying, all right, who are you? Okay, who is my actual assistant aide gonna be that's gonna be doing this? In the same chat, GPT chat. Don't start a new one, it'll something. Copy and paste the prompt below. Well, chat GPT avatar. You're gonna do this and save that as client avatar.x, right? Save it somewhere, okay? Put it in its own folder so you don't confuse with others. Based on the business profile above, create a detailed avatar of the perfect client company for your service. Okay, again, commercial contracting, whether it's a special contracting, whatever, HVAC, whatever that is. IT support services, estimating software, project management, consulting, whatever your service is, include that. Again, it's very similar. What keeps them up at night? Make this a person with a name, background, and personality. By the way, it'll create that for you. So it'll actually say, this is Tom Hernandez, 47-year-old senior professional who's been in the industry for 20 years. It'll create the profile for you. So there you go. Mike Rodriguez, 42, senior project manager. So now I'll show you what this looks like as you go through here. Once you're done with that, then you go through here and I'm going to show you. Let me show you what that avatar looks like.
Did you copy that template below and plug it in again?
Yeah. You know, I did. What I'm going to show you is the finished product, what I did earlier. Because we're running tight, I'm going to, rather than continue to go in this route. Okay, so where's that at? Sorry, bear with me. Okay. It's not there, so I got to open it. So, show you what I did here. That you can create in there. All right. So here you go. So looking at this, by the way, is that link up there? That's the link, and you'll get this in an email to my custom profile that I created for you, ChatGPT. So when you go and you type that link in, it'll take you to the CD project manager or what have you. I think it's I'll show it to you, the build man, and you can use mine as a tester. See, and then type answers into it. Okay, that link will take you to what this created. But building a custom GPT. All right. I created a description for it, instructions. So what we did before, this was my ideal client avatar. Yeah. You get better at this. Title, Mike Herrera, age 47, 15, 20 years, overseeing capital improvement maintenance and construction projects, background and personality. Mike came up through the trades. So once I create the avatar, I put that information to it, it'll create all this information. Daily challenge and pain points, coordinating architects, subcontractors, goals and priorities, delivering projects on time within budget. So again, when you put in that copy and paste, it'll give you a breakdown of goals and priorities, technology company level, decision making. Okay, keep going. Go back up a little bit. Nice project. Yeah, Procore plan here, blue beam. Okay. So once that's done, let me go back into Chrome here. And let's see. Now, if you look over here on this, so when you have these prompts, okay, so let's say we did a new chat. That's what this looks like. On the right over here, you see where it says GPTs? That's where this is. So once you create that that market profile. And again, the instructions are here. You do the avatar, it'll create that profile. You then go into explore GPTs and you say, okay, I want to create a GPT. All right. And here you say configure. Or configure, you give a name to your GPT. You can call it a name, right? Call it, John Doe, or you give it a specific name, which I recommend, and I've named here to the trade you're giving it, the geography, and what it does. You then give it a description. Okay, what does this do? And you can use ChatGPT or Claude to do that. Say, hey, what is a good description for what this does? And you can ask that as in another chat. And I'll say, okay, based on what you're saying, this would be a really good description for what this person is doing. All right. Instructions, again, what you're putting in here is the blueprints for your aid. All right. Instructions. Now you put in instructions as to what it is it's supposed to be doing. All right. And how does it behave? What it should be doing? What it's going to give to you? Okay. All those. And again, that's another chat. And again, the instructions are here. Say, what are the instructions that this person should be doing based on the rule that I've given to it? Let's say, okay, it should be giving you an outline of this, 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 what have you. It'll break it down for you. Then you upload those files. This is the meat and potatoes of it. You go to upload files and you upload that avatar. You upload that market document. Those two documents you saved, that's most of where it's going to get information. Okay. Instructions are important. Okay. But again, it's in here as we go through because again, we're running all over. Go through there and take a look at that. But just type in the instructions of what it looks like. But don't even try the first one. You say, what are the instructions to a custom GPT that I should write for this? And you can put your own document in there saying, copy and paste, like, here's my avatar, here's my market profile. What are the instructions you recommend writing for this? It'll give it to you. All right. Then you go back in here, and when it's done, you just hit create. Boom. It'll create the GPT for you. Okay. Then you go back over, and it'll say, do you want to save it in the sidebar over here on the left? Right? Oh, yeah, I do. So here it is. So I click on it, and that's what it looks like. So I'll give it a name. CD, Arizona Commercial Build Advisor. Helps owners facilitate, facility leaders, project teams, and project stakeholders. Providing guidance, communication support, and students ready insights about every stage of the build. So it's sort of an overview of a project manager team lead in Arizona and those two counties that is very experienced. Now, what's the question we can ask it? All right, well, I'll end it with this.
This isn't a real person, right? And this is the AI.
It'll feel like it, and I'm not kidding. There are people that like refer to an assistant. I asked Tony the other day, and you're like, I don't know who that is. oh. And if there's affection, then it gets weird. But okay. So yeah, but it happens. It actually happens. Yeah. So okay, so on here at step 4 in the document I'm giving you, it says ask your employee. Right. So let's grab it. Let's say, let's see. How about on this one? Go back to go back to ChatGPT. Can you type this in there? Let's type this in. Create a toolbox talk on ladder safety for commercial construction. And then before you type it, before you do it further, save that file. Just copy and paste that in. Not yet. Now go ahead and watch that. Here's how here's the Vanish will come across. By the way, CLK, it'll know, okay, 99% probability he meant talk.
You can have more than one avatar.
As you want. And then you can start to get more advanced and actually have them talk to each other. It does. So the reason that didn't take 15 seconds is because now it's crossing all those references to data of your profile. So it's going to take a little bit longer, but you're going to get a much more specific answer. Ladder selection, inspect labels for amplification, crack rail, web missing setup. level surface, 3 feet, a ladder above the roof access, climbing and working, base ladder don't carry, storage, Arizona specific considerations, fiberglass ladders left can be hot. Discussion questions for anybody that's on the toolbox thought, closing thought. Now, try and go to, put it in your chat, and type the same question. You saw how fast that was. Now it's giving you a very generalized key safety rules. Nothing's getting specific to Arizona really. Hold on, use the right height. Notice another one, it actually gave us 3 because it knew the specs, okay? So keep going, set up safely, for the one rule, keep going down, environment awareness. So now it doesn't know that, okay, don't use fiberglass ladders. Now it's saying, be aware of your environment and the conditions out there, right? So if you go through this, this is what I would suggest. Use it in a regular prompt, then use it in a custom GPT prompt, and you'll start to see there's a whole host of questions in there, emails written on change orders. You'll start to see that. Now you start to say, okay, interesting. Let's refine this a little bit, and let's create one specific to this capacity and this role, and you start testing it a little bit, and then you can go back into anytime you want. You can go in here, and nobody can change my custom GPT that I showed for you. You're the owner of yours, so we can go in there. Again, just everybody, you're about 10 minutes over. So anybody who's on the go, please don't all get to say. If I go back here and I click up here on this customized GPT, I can go edit GPT. All right, welcome back. Okay, and I go to configure. Now here we can see instructions. These were the instructions, and I gave some instructions. You are an experienced senior construction. I'll share this with you so you can see what my instructions look like for this job. Okay, that way you can actually see, like, open that up. I gave it a fair amount of instructions, critical rules to follow. My tone, I want professional, direct and collaborative, like an experienced project manager. Your knowledge base, you've been trained on the Arizona commercial construction market, local construction conditions, real world contract owner dynamics. So I've given it a lot of information in my instructions. Again, I'll share that with you. But let's say I wanted to go up there and I wanted to add more knowledge base articles. I wanted to add 3 or 4 regulatory documents tied to the specific role. I'd add that to it and say, please reference that. And again, and some of those prompts even here, I say, don't, and I've already told it here, don't have anything up in those instructions. So you don't have to keep typing those defensive prompting in. So, and anyway, so you can adapt it and change this as you go. If you see something like that's a weird answer. But now, anytime I have something specific to that, I can just click on that and use that custom GPT, or I can use the regular prompt. And either way, you're going to want to use good habits in that prompting. Any questions on how to do that with that custom GPT? Again, you have it here. So the last thing I'll show you is, let me just tell you what was that? Can you bring that presentation again? Pretty good. I should have slide. All right, the ROI is clear. $20 a month employee, there's 24/7, never complains, get smarter with time. Can't beat that. So you have this,
Rely on it.
so link to all the files. So this is the link to all the files for the class. We'll send you the email for this information. You have a copy here. We get all the information, all that stuff that I sent to you. And there's a lot in there. Just take a look at it, your own discretion. Hopefully there's some value in there for you. And the last slide I have is just next up. So this is what I talked about. You came to learn about AI construction. Just wanted to keep you a little confident, a little bit of a better fundamental understanding of what it is. Software that gives you fuzzy input and fuzzy outputs. Gives you fuzzy inputs, but gives you a clear output. But again, it will always give you an answer. It's based on predictability and probability. So it's just filling in the blanks. But it's so again, it's very, 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 very powerful software. It's going to be around for stay. It's not bad. It might become a little less popular than it is now, slow down, green steam, but ultimately it's going to be part of it. It's going to be part of software moving forward for a while. Definitely. try something new, go back, try to create a profile, or at the very least, try some custom prompts. If you get some custom prompts in there, just the general prompts, and you like them, save them to your desktop, or just put it on a cheat sheet on your, say, okay, this is good syntax for prompts moving forward. Get answers quickly that way. The question you ask on a regular basis. If you like a second set of eyes, and this is what I would say to people is regarding us. Well, as AI gets better, it's not taking jobs. It's making you more effective at your job. It's taking mundane tasks out of your job, which shouldn't be there anyway. If anybody asks you about it, think of bank tellers were terrified of ATMs when they came out back in the day. Taking our job. You're getting rid of all of it. It turned out that the banking industry took a big boom after the ATMs came out because dispensing cash turned out to be the least favorite job of bank tellers. Then they started working on customer service and actually working on investment portfolios, how to actually give loans, all the things that they want to be doing, but had to spend so much darn time giving cash out. So they took this idiotic task out that just took time away from what they really wanted to be doing. And they actually saw an increase in hiring in that industry. It's like that with this. It's just trying to get a lot of those mundane tasks out of your way so that you can focus on what you do well. And hopefully you'll see a boom in the industry because of it. So if you do need somebody though, because it is still pretty heavy in the technology, you need somebody to help you out with that, we're here. I mean, if you didn't even come in and sit on a meeting, myself or one of our team will do that. And so I put that code up there. If you just want to send me an email, send me an email. I'll be glad to send that out. I'll show resources. I really think of myself as part of this industry. And anywhere we can help. We just have to have somebody that knows technology and AI together, and just technology in construction, because it gives you a different perspective. It really does. Having somebody in the room that looks at things a little differently, in those leadership meetings especially, can really give you a different perspective on things. So hopefully a beneficial one. So again, if you ever need that, this is a QR code right here. It's on that sheet. Take a picture of that on your slide, or you just go to our website and reach out to us and say, hey, I'd like you to come in and just talk to us and give us some insights into this. Are we doing this right? Or, how can we leverage this a bit better? Or we're looking at a software tool that claims it does this in AI. What do you think? We'll help you out with that. I appreciate everybody's time today and for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jack. Awesome presentation.
I made it all up.
It's real AI.
Good night.